Okay, hey guys, Dan Fitzpatrick here. You can see I'm all dressed up. Um, StockMarketMentor.com. Today, I want to look at the things that we have been looking at for months, and that is the memory and data storage stocks. And there's a reason for that. And so let's get right to it. I don't think this is going to take me a whole lot of time. So we're looking at Bloom Energy. I notice one of I think it was IBD, was talking about all the memory stocks sold off today. Trump lifts the Dow. I'm going to go look at that. So yeah, Trump lifts the Dow, but AI leaders hit. What to do? Okay, so here's the deal. So we've got crude oil up a lot, and that's because the Iranians continue to lie, and Trump continues to say we're going to bomb the snot out of you, but not yet. And so, and of course, not too much is flowing through the Strait of Hormuz other than water that probably has a bunch of oil in it. So we got that going for us, right? Now, here's the thing. It mentions Bloom Energy, but there's other stuff that is that's really having a tough time now. And I'll cut right to the chase. Here's a spoiler alert. In essence, we've been on at Stock Market Mentor anyway. I don't know if you're a member or not. If you're not, you should be. Period. We're making a lot of money. Are you? So we've been on this for a long time, and I've been coaching people. Hey, take some off the table. Time to start selling a little bit, but don't sell everything. And just kind of let it work. And then at some point, you'll wind up saying, okay, I've ridden this train long enough. I think it's time to hop off at the next station. I got one guy today, really kind of made my day. I got one guy today who posted in the trading room that he said, I finally took I'm just going to go ahead and pull it up so I can read it verbatim. He said, hang on. Okay, I found it. I didn't want you to wait with me while I'm searching through all my crap. This was at 10:30 this morning. He says, SanDisk sold off the last quarter of my position for a total profit of 168%. Thanks, Dan. He misspelled thanks, but if you make 168%, you can get somebody else to spell thanks for you, right? So the point is, this gentleman had been trading and kind of selling a little bit here and there, and then finally this gets up here from our initial entry, which when you look at the whole in the eternal scope of things. Sure would have been nice to have gotten it down there, but I don't have the Wayback Machine, so I can't do that. But we did get it here on this big move higher, traded around it here, and finally this thing rips up like this. So the bottom line is, though, I'm looking at these and are they rolling over? Now, DRAM, this isn't a good look. Now, it's only down 3.5%, so it's not a big deal, and it is an IPO. This will be just by nature of the fact that it's an IPO. This can be pretty volatile, but it's not like it's illiquid. Almost 39 million shares traded today, and that's kind of a lot. So I look at this and I'm thinking, okay, what's going on beneath the hood here? So we look at Bloom Energy. Looks like it could be a double top. It's fallen below the 20-day moving average, but basically, this is where support is. So I'll just go ahead and set an alert for me. Now, would I short this stock? Hell no. It's up in the upper right-hand corner of the chart. You don't short stocks that are in the winner circle, but sooner or later, it is kind of time to take profits. And if you're saying, oh, well, I'm going to buy this on the rebound, okay, that's fine. You can do that. but you have to respect this as support. And so if you say, okay, I'm going to buy it on the rebound, seriously, your expectation for this is clear up at 19%. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good move. But now my question is, in light of the entire market in this sector, can you really reasonably expect that? Maybe. But as I look at this, this is just one to be watched. I wouldn't be buying it here. I don't think it's an opportunity today. Now, SanDisk, I wouldn't say this is, I guess it's sold off because it's down 5.3%. But guys, if we weren't looking at this and we're just looking at the chart, all I'm seeing is, here, we'll pull this off. All I'm seeing is a stock that's kind of pulling back to the 20-day moving average and probably giving us a pretty decent chance to buy the stock. That's how I see it. If we look at MU, this is a little different. By the way, it's at a different space in the memory data storage biz than SanDisk is. This is down a lot. I wouldn't be buying this here. Look at the difference in steepness between this and this. The character in the charts are completely different. Now, WDC, this again looks like one like, oh my God, it's down almost 5% today. Yeah, it tested the 20-day moving average. Not that big a deal. In fact, for people who have been looking for a buying opportunity, this could be it. And then the last one here is Seagate. Okay, this is also, this has been on a pretty steep move, and this pullback, it's a little uncomfortable for me, a little bit, not quite as bad as Micron, but not very good, we'll put it that way. So as I see this, these stocks they're not reversing. I mean, this one looks pretty fugly, but these things aren't reversing. But they're sure not giving you the sense that, oh my God, this is my great opportunity to buy. Like I said, some of them are down at levels where you would say, I think this is a buying opportunity. But the question is it a good buying opportunity? These things have come up so much, so fast, that at some point, even though you're not going to see a big reversal, all the bears keep calling for that, and they can keep calling. It's not going to happen, at least that I see. And only the liars and the fools see a big pullback happening because they don't know. Nobody does. But I see these things continuing to go higher, but that doesn't mean that these pullbacks are pullbacks that you need to buy right now. What I would do is, I'll just back through them. Seagate, wait to see some firmness. Western Digital, look and see how this trades tomorrow. It could be Jimmy Shaker Day. Micron, you need to wait on this. I don't think it's buyable here. It's got a little damage here, needs to pull back. I would say if it gets back, or I should say when it gets back to 600, then maybe you take a look at it. And then finally, SanDisk, I would be looking at this on Wednesday or Thursday, not so much tomorrow. This has a little more work to do. So anyway, that's all I got for you. Again, I'm just telling you, if you're not a member of Stock Market Mentor, we're doing really, really well over there. And I am changing things around so that I'm focusing on quality of education as opposed to just quantity of videos. Video every day. Watch the video today. Got a lot of stock picks for you. I'm going really, really deeper now and giving people not just ideas for trading. Sure, you get stock picks. A blind monkey can pick stocks. I'm giving you the ability, the knowledge, the experience to actually make money on these things. So here, $7. $7, not 8. $7 for a free trial. If you count $7 free, as I do. So I will see you there, okay? Anyway, that's all I got for you. Does it seem like I'm kind of hard selling you? If it does, that's a good thing because I am.